Welcome to the Croc Podcast.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here is your host, Dr. E.
Howdy, Croc Nation. Dr. Tommy and Ellie here with you with another amazing Croc podcast. Joining me, my bestie, my side guy, my best friend of all time, the OG co-host extraordinaire, Angel Santana. Have faith, let it begin. Angel, welcome.
What's going on? Let me tell you, we have had an amazing start to January. And as we roll into February, I am excited more and more about where the Croc Podcast is going. And I'm even more excited that we're going to get to meet with the board. How are you, Dr. E?
Oh my God, we're going to have Korean fried broccoli and you're going to get your burger. It's going to be the greatest day ever. And we're going to talk about great things. You know, I just before the board meeting, I will say the following. I think we finally, after 3 years of podcasting, I think we found our formula. I think we found what works best for our Croc Nation. And I think instead of, you know, all the high-powered guests, although we just had Talea, who was amazing, as always, and a very, very good guest. I think the best way we could serve our constituency, our survivor thrivers, is just with those stories and snippets and lessons that we get every day in the clinic by our survivor thrivers or by our colleagues, and then bringing it back to the Croc Podcast, to the Croc Nation, and letting them know that we are listening and we are taking notes and you guys are making us better. And if we're better, then we're going to make your lives better. So is that kind of your impression as well?
I think so. I think Citizens United to Overcome Cancer, quote unquote, the Croc Podcast, has put ourselves in a position to really understand. It's almost like the peek behind the curtain, which we've already done, but now we're front and center while still being behind the curtain. So it's giving you both sides, the side of your view, but more importantly, the true stories behind the persons. And you don't have to have had cancer to listen to us. You can learn about all the things that are happening in the world, and it will make you a better person. It'll give you more patience and a better understanding. God forbid you run into these situations.
Exactly. And that's a really good segue into tonight's podcast, which is a little unusual for us because we're always talking about, our absolute infatuation with our survivor thrivers and our absolute, love and just admiration and warm feelings about our survivor thrivers that we can come into contact every day. But there was a patient that came in a few weeks ago, and I do see these patients on occasion. We call them the difficult patients, the dealing with the very challenging patients. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great, although not our usual type of podcast, to talk about reality, to talk about the fact that what happens if you don't like your patient? What happens if there's a patient that comes in and they just rub you the wrong way? And, and again, dealing with the difficult patient. So, I think, Angel, as oncology health professionals, we revere and respect our survivor thrivers. And we think that we're the luckiest people on the face of the earth to be able to be the people to take care of these special, amazing patients. And we develop this interconnectedness. And I will dare to say these feelings of love. And love for everyone, even the difficult patients. But just as we may love our family members, and I am the number one example of this, there are times we may not like them. We may love them, but we may not like them. It's not that we don't like them as humans, we may not like their behaviors. So it comes as no shock that we have to recognize and prepare ourselves for these patients who express belligerence and, express illogic and express anger. This may test our inner strength and even risk developing a non-therapeutic environment. And that could be potentially harmful for both the patient, the survivor thriver, as well as the healthcare professional. So I'd like to start with telling the story of Linda. So Linda came to us on the eve of the Christmas holiday. She is in her 50s. She's a hairdresser, which actually comes into play in a moment. And she started having trouble breathing, and she started getting hoarse of voice, and she got some x-rays, and it showed a large, tremendously large laryngeal mass. As a matter of fact, her airway was just a dot. It was pinpoint. Um, I was going away the day after I saw her. The medical oncologist was going away. We both happened to be going out of the country after we saw her. Angel, from the minute that Linda walked into the clinic, she exhibited extreme hostility. She exhibited ignorance about her situation. She exhibited belligerence, which, if you look up that word, it means aggressive, or truculent or harsh attitude, atmosphere or disposition. So very difficult from when she walked in the room, very angry, very illogical about what was happening, very entitled and very demanding. And she was also very manipulative. So right from the get-go, soon as she walked into the room, we felt, the nurses and I felt like we were being held hostage. So the first thing she tried to negotiate is that she didn't want any chemotherapy that was going to cause her to lose her hair. Now, this is understandable. She's a hairdresser. I get that. Then we told her that we wanted her to get a tracheostomy to protect her airway, because her tumor was so big that it was blocking off her, just about ready to suffocate her. And she told us that she would not do that because she would not she would not like to be seen with a tracheostomy. Then went back to the hair, and we talked to her about the availability of a thing called a cold cap. It's a device that certain patients use that keeps their head cold, vasoconstricts the follicles, the hair follicles, so that even though the chemotherapy might try to go after those hair follicles, some patients are able to have the hair loss mitigated by this cold cap. When we told her that, she expected us to provide her a cold cap. She expected us to buy her a cold cap. She expected us to go call the insurance company or the vendor and order her a cold pack. And then last but not least, when we told her that she would have to have a mask on for the radiation, she told us she wouldn't do a mask because she wouldn't feel comfortable in a mask. And we tried to explain to her that if she didn't wear the mask, she would move and I would hit her spinal cord and perhaps risk making her paralyzed. So right from the get-go, I knew I was in for I was in for a pound of flesh, as they say. Your thoughts, just as we talk about Linda a little further.
It's like you're going down the aisle because you're about to have a 12 round fight, and you're the one that's going to be on the receiving end. You're the punching bag in essence.
Yeah. And let me backtrack one quick thing. So when we talk about the difficult patient, we're not talking about a patient that is a danger to you or a patient that comes in super rageful and inappropriately rageful. That's a different story, a different story for a different day. Linda certainly was not that. She was not a danger, except to herself. And she certainly was not inappropriate where I needed to call a code gray. So just wanted to make sure that I said that. So what I thought I would do tonight, Angel, is go through the 10 steps on how we can kind of take this situation and make it better, how we could actually not even make it better, how we could make it viable, how we could take a difficult patient like Linda and turn all of these negatives into a positive. And when I say a positive, at the end of the day, a cure. Under the restrictions and the limitations that we discussed. So step one is to, as a practitioner, beware of becoming judgmental. We are physicians and nurses and healthcare professionals that really have our thought processes, our biases, our philosophies have no place in a cancer clinic. who are we to judge a cancer survivor thriver, even if it's someone who's behaving very difficultly, if that's even a word? It's like the expression, you really don't know what it feels like unless you take a walk in the shoes of a survivor thriver. And it's really important for us to keep that first and foremost in our minds, to beware of that judgment. It's not important what's on our minds, what our thought process is, or what's important to us. We do not make divine law. So the most important thing for little category one is beware of judgment. Number two, beware of loss of empathy. Patients that are difficult and belligerent and entitled and demanding, they tend to try to push us away and not make us care about them. And I have to tell you that we need to make sure that we, even if a patient is not likable, they are lovable and they are to be respected. Even if I use this expression, just not my kind of person, it doesn't matter. We still have to find within us that empathy to care and be concerned about what their experience is. For instance, we need to understand that this person, care means a lot to this person, a lot to the point where she might actually prefer death than to not have any loss of hair. Now, at first, that sounds extremely silly, but it's not. And you have to find that connected point, that point where you could say, wow, that would be like you taking away my ability to travel, or my ability to walk in the woods, or my ability to walk, to ride a bike. I'd rather die if I couldn't do all those things. Someone else might not understand that. But to me, that's what's important to me. So we have to make sure we achieve that empathy. Number three, and this is really probably the most important point, is beware of the loss of what I call the therapeutic dyad. And that's just a fancy term. So it's the relationship that we develop with our survivor thriver that I feel is as important as the other aspects of a cancer cure. So what is the anatomy of a cancer cure? Number one, early diagnosis. Number two, putting together a proper treatment plan in a multidisciplinary way, meaning all of the medical teams working together. Execution of that plan expertly and with absolute perfection. The excellent management of side effects, so you can make the patient's life somewhat comfortable, and fastidious surveillance to make sure they don't fall through the cracks, and we can ensure that their cure is forever. And I believe, Angel, in my heart of hearts, that the formation and strengthening of this therapeutic relationship is just as important, if not the most important thing, to a cancer cure. So it was my job not to judge Linda, but to bond with Linda on some level, to whatever level she allowed us to bond with her. I needed to find that commonality. I needed to find something, just like we did with D that we talked about a few weeks ago. You have to be number four, beware of being manipulated. It could result in a disaster. So patients that are very aggressive and in your face, and like I said, demanding and manipulative, sometimes you do what they want just to kind of get out of that uncomfortable situation. And you cannot allow yourself to let your guard down and be manipulated by this type of patient. Number five, you have to use your staff as a barometer when you lose your perspective. So in this case, I'm getting bombarded and I'm like trying to please the patient, trying to connect with the patient, trying to empathize with the patient, and trying to satisfy an unsatisfiable, again, not a word, we make them up, an unsatisfiable patient. So I sort of lost my perspective. I had to lean on Jessica Verblau. Thank you I saw it in your eyes. I saw it, and my therapist, Mary, Mary McGreal. I saw they didn't say it to me, but I knew that they thought I was doing the wrong thing. They would have told me eventually, but I read it in their eyes, and I used them as a barometer when I lost my sense of perspective. So Jessica and Mary, thank you. Number 6, beware of extenuating circumstances. So in this case, the patient was seen on Christmas Eve. I was on a plane to Iceland on December 26th, and her medical oncologist was in India for 1 month. So she was sort of lost in the wind, right? She was out there without anyone taking care of her, really. And she really needed to have care. So, that has to be part of your, of this whole equation that we're talking about. Number 7, don't be intimidated. You need to embrace this confrontation. I am not a confrontational person. I pretty much will do anything I can to avoid confrontation. It's just not in my genes. It's not in my DNA. And I remember the scene, we probably said it before on this podcast. I say it all the time, use this as an analogy. There's a movie called The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, when the serial killer, he takes the moment, he invites his victim into the house, and there's that moment where the victim sort of in the back of their minds know that if they go into the house, they're going to die, but they don't want to be rude. They don't want to risk confrontation, and they ultimately get led to their death. And I know that's an extreme example, of course, but we as humans just don't like confrontation. I do know people who actually thrive on it, but thankfully they're the rare ones. However, we do need to take a page out of their book, and we need to embrace this confrontation. You don't have to like it. You just have to do it. Number 8, you have to stay professional. Don't get drawn off sides. Another sports analogy. Do not become reactive, because when you become reactive, and that's exactly what the difficult patient wants you to do. They want to get under your skin. They want to annoy you, and they want to get a reaction out of you. And if that happens, game is over. You've lost. They now control you. So you have to stay professional. Number 9, stay focused on what's important. What's important is the patient's best interest. Even if they're doing everything possible not to do what's in their best interest, you have to stay the course. You cannot bend. You have to stay the course. You have to do it. Even if you can't let your own personal insecurities. So one of my insecurities is I'm a people pleaser to a defect. I want to always please people because I'm insecure as a human being. And that's a bad trait to have when you have this type of patient, because you will end up doing something that they want you to do, but may not be in their best interest. And number 10, don't listen to others. So in this case, especially, we live in the Hudson Valley, as you know, we practice in the Hudson Valley. So we're an hour and 10 minutes away from the best cancer hospitals in the world: Memorial Sloan Kettering, Mount Sinai, NYU, Lenox Hill, Beth Israel. I don't know if I'm leaving anybody out, but Columbia, obviously. So these are all the big hospitals. So Linda actually went to Columbia, and her ENT told her she did not need to have a tracheostomy. So I'm just thinking to myself, well, if this doctor says she doesn't need a tracheostomy, she doesn't need a tracheostomy. So I'm in Iceland, and the daughter calls me in a panic. She has to start immediately. I say, okay, I'm coming back to the office on Thursday, January 2nd. We're going to start your mom on Thursday, January 2nd. I bring her in. It's a disaster. She doesn't want the mask. She's screaming. She's fighting with the staff. Somehow we get her treated that first day. As soon as that happened, then thank God, all of these lessons, all of these bullet points, these 10 bullet points solidified in my mind. And I took a step back, and I looked at Mary, and I looked at Jessica, and they said, okay, she's coming in tomorrow at whatever. I go, no, she's not coming in tomorrow. she's getting a tracheostomy tomorrow. So I called the daughter and I told the daughter, your mom is getting a tracheostomy. I will not give her another treatment. She needs her airway protected. She's been in the emergency room 4 times over 4 days because she can't breathe. She can't lay down. She's uncooperative. She won't let us treat her. And she's the wrong patient to roll the dice on. Perhaps her airway was secure. Perhaps she wouldn't have died if we continued radiation, which could have swollen her airway even more and caused her to die. And I just finally, everything just solidified in my mind. I called her doctors at Columbia. I said, guys, if you want to radiate her, please do, because I will not give her radiation. She needs a tracheostomy. If you think I'm being a baby, if you think that I'm overreacting, God bless you. Please take care of her because we're not taking care of her. They finally acquiesced, went back to Columbia, got a tracheostomy. She still wasn't happy. She was still complaining, although she had a trach in. She was complaining through her trach about how she looked with the trach and about her hair, and we didn't get her cold cap, and the mask was too tight, and she had to start treatments immediately, and we had to rush her, and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, we did the right thing. So in essence, we all are, every once in a while, are going to come across a difficult patient. We're going to come across a patient we may not like. We're going to love them. We're going to empathize with them. We may not like them, but these are the 10 things we need to do to serve them. Angel Santana, have faith, let it begin. Your thoughts.
I just think it's amazing how, a person, and I'm not by any means degrading her because I'm not in her shoes. However, it's amazing how she kept her guns, she kept what she wanted. But when it was all said and done, I think despite all of her anger, despite all of the things deep down inside, I think she knew that she was being taken care of. But you know what? When you're in that situation, as we are all in, when it comes to other things, we love to complain because it's the only comfort that we have. It's the only fight we have left. And I think that, the fighting she did, she really didn't lose the battle because hopefully she'll win the war.
And believe it or not, I believe she will. So tonight I'm going to end the podcast a little differently, still with our crock blessing and prayer, but particularly for the patients that require a little more of us, for the patients that might be difficult, for the patients that might be unlikable, for the patients that might be belligerent and demanding and unreasonable and illogical. I want to say this. We still love you. We still want to take care of you. And we still want you to be cured. And we still want you to be our patient. And we want you to be a long-term survivor thriver. So for all of you out there and for all of the healthcare professionals, the oncology staffs that take care of these types of patients, I want to wish you all a very long, healthy, happy, and cancer-free life. And may God bless you. May God be with you. Peace.
Hey, Croc Nation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to your friends. Visit our website, crocvip.com. We would love to hear your feedback.